Hi guys, my name is Annabelle from Horizon Cosplay and today we're making a vintage waistcoat. Or more specifically, we're making this vintage waistcoat, which is very spring-like. So, this idea came from the fact that every Christmas I like to watch Barney's Night Before Christmas, and in that the mum wears the most gorgeous holiday themed waistcoat, and so I went online, started googling Christmas ones, which came back very well. Subscribe if you want to see more, but more importantly it came up with ones for other seasons as well. So what I've actually done is ordered one waistcoat per season. This one here, which is gardening themed, is going to be for spring, and you guys will have to wait to see what we've got for summer, autumn and winter, but I'm very excited, and I suppose I should start this one off. This was the only one I was a bit unsure about when I was ordering it online, so let's see how it turns out. I've also never really made a lot of things from panels before, so I think this is going to be interesting. And with that, I suppose we should get crafting. To start off, Ben was very helpful and ironed the panel for me while I actually organised my life, as that's the thing you have to do occasionally. Then I rummaged through my stash and found this nice light green curtain. The lining was that horrid plastic blackout stuff, so that got torn up. A process that was overly satisfying, by the way. Then I gave it back to my chief ironer, and Ben flattened out the outside of the curtain too. This actually turned out to be 100% cotton, so I am super happy about that. So this is what the waistcoat looks like all laid out flat. As you can see, we've got two front pieces, one back piece, and then some like appliques I think they're supposed to be. We've got some butterflies and some gardening implements. Not 100% sure what we're going to do with those. But this is also known as the, let's have a look at the title here, the green thumb vest. And this is what we're aiming for. I think this lady looks very, very pretty, I have to say. Hopefully I'll be as happy as she is when this vest is done. Also, I just noticed, but along the bottom of the vest, we've actually got like strawberry and pansy and daisy and fern all labelled out, and I think that is the most adorable thing ever, though my favourite thing is definitely the butterflies. I do love a very good butterfly. But now we've had a decent look at it, we should read through those instructions and then maybe start cutting this thing out. Once that was all done, I roughly cut out the waistcoat pieces with Ben's help before arranging them onto the cotton and wadding. I seriously debated putting the wadding in this waistcoat, but without it I was worried it would just be drab. And this is supposed to add some colour and shape to my wardrobe after all, so I don't really want it to be that. Then I took off ice skating while Ben finished cutting everything out for me. Okay, so everything is cut out, sewing machine is set up, and we have several colours of threads. We have green, blue and pink, all of which I have tried to colour match to the waistcoat. Yes, waistcoat, I was trying to think of what it was then. And the idea is that we're going to quilt it like you would a patchwork quilt, just to keep all three layers together. And, well, there's no way around it. Let's just see how this goes and keep your fingers crossed that this works out for me. Now, fun fact about my machine, guys, and that's that it is technically a quilting machine. And good news, because we are literally quilting, so I figured I would try out some of these lovely stitches I haven't had much opportunity to use in the last few years. Oh, that's annoying.
What?
My thread just snapped. After that, it went pretty well, and I loved the results so much, we just carried right on doing all the pink on the back. Okay, well, all the pink stitching is done on the back, and because I'm really, really lazy and don't want to keep changing the thread on my machine, we're going to do the front two sides now, and then we'll change the thread colour, and then we'll work from there. The pink stitches on the front went swimmingly, and they were so neat I was honestly rather impressed. I'll be honest here and say that I often avoid using some of these decorative stitches that I have on my machine because honestly it just seems to really struggle with a few of them and they come out looking dodgy as. But note to self, the quilting ones seem great, so drop this video a like if you want to see me use more of them. Once that was all done, I got to work rethreading the machine, which actually isn't that hard, but I'm lazy so I find this process horribly tedious. Then we were on to the blue. For the first few lines I used another wibbly wobbly stitch before deciding that you actually can have too much of a good thing and swapping for a straight one for the next few rows on both the front and the back panels. And at this point I was so happy that I had decided to quilt it. Honestly, I'd been a bit 50-50 on it, but it just looks so good that 10 out of 10 would highly recommend. So this is really coming together quite nicely and I'm super chuffed with it. So there's one more colour to do for the quilting, and that is the light green, and once we've done light green that'll be all the rows quilted. I'm debating about whether or not I want to do these little squares or like go around these bits up here. What I figure is that what I might do is finish off the entire waistcoat so it's wearable and then come back and do these if I have time. But for now, green, that means go. So we got going. I did some straight stitches first, then moved on to a few wibbly wobbly lines, and then onto something a little more decorative for the base of the flowers. This actually turned out so nicely, and I am super happy I was brave enough to experiment with it. And with that all done, we got pinning so that I could try it on. Okay, so my house is a mess, which several reasons, but let's face it, no one's surprised. One of the reasons it's a mess though is because Ben went and picked me up a parachute today, which meant he had to dump all his tools last minute in the house because I'm making this dress. So subscribe if you'd like to see that. Otherwise though, I have just pinned the waistcoat together. Now the waistcoat, when I cut it out, actually had several sizing grades, and now I just cut it out the biggest grade possible because why not? But I've actually pinned it the smallest one, and that I think is gonna pretty much fit me just fine. I really like it, and I think this is gonna be surprisingly warm as well, which I'm a bit pleased about, because one of the things I like about waistcoats is wearing them when it's kind of too hot for a full jumper, but you still want long sleeves, just light long sleeves, and this will pretty much do exactly what I wanted it to. So this should look nice, and the shoulders and the side bits are a bit chunky because, well, they've got lots and lots of seam allowance, like a good 3 centimeters either side. So I think what I'm going to do is grab a ruler. In pencil I'm going to draw the line to make sure I know where I'm sewing. Then I'm going to pin it again, then I'm going to stitch it, and fingers crossed this all goes well. So I unpinned everything and with a ruler and pencil drew in the lines to show where it was I would need to sew. And then I got out the big scissors and trimmed down the extra seam allowance I had left around the armholes, and honestly they were the only thing that was a little bit tight, and I wouldn't have minded being just a bit bigger. After that I repinned everything and got sewing the 3 seams that needed to be attached to make this a wearable item of clothing. And yes, I did not miscount there really is only 3 seams. I too am shocked at its simplicity, but it's a nice break from the far more complicated projects I seem to love taking on. And if you want regular updates of what I'm doing, by the way, we do have a lovely little community over on Discord, and if you would like to join, the link is in the description below, so please do check it out. Now I thought this was done, but oopsie-daisies, one side was not aligned, and there was this brief moment where I considered that I would just leave it because I didn't care, but then I realised I kind of did, so I unpicked the side, being careful not to catch any of my quilting stitches, then repinned it and sewed it with great care before, voila, we were done. Okay, so essentially we have a waistcoat, it's just not finished yet. So I did think about doing all of the raw edges tonight, and you know what, it's like 11 o'clock, I've got work in the morning, I can't be bothered with any of that stuff. However, the one thing I want to do before I go to bed is just trim these excess bits down from where I did it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim everything except for just a little bit of green, and then that bit of green we're going to fold it over, put it over the top of the seam allowance, and then we're going to hand stitch it down to make it super neat and tidy, because I don't really like raw edges on my stuff, I've got to be honest. So let's get that done, then I'll go to bed, and then maybe I'll have time to hand stitch it before breakfast. We'll see. And with that I got trimming and pinning, something that thankfully didn't take too long, and my only disappointment about it was that because I had work in the morning I couldn't stay up all night to work on it, which honestly I kind of wanted to do. Having said that, one reason I'm working my weekends off from my actual day job right now is because I'm saving up for several big projects for this channel. Things like the parachute dress and fixing this original antique Victorian sewing machine and getting its hand-carved case repaired unfortunately do cost quite a bit of money. Having said that, we have only £88 left before I can order the parts and tools I need to get that done. So I would ask, if you guys enjoy my content and would like to see more of it, please do check out my Ko-Fi. I have a whole load of free sewing patterns there for you to download, and if you wanted to drop a donation while you're over there, I would be incredibly grateful. Not to mention, if you do donate, you will get a shout out in my next video and your name sewn into my next project, which actually reminds me. Okay, so I have a little bit of time before I go to work today, meaning that we can get a few things done, and last week we got some Ko-Fi donations, which means I need to put people's names on this jacket, and I have a theory of how I'm going to do it, but before I test this theory, one thing I need to do is cut out all of the binding for essentially all these raw edges. I am reasonably sure this is going to work out quite nicely. Have hopes, guys, I have hopes. But essentially my plan for this morning is just to get all the binding cut out, and then if we can get to embroidering names, great. If we don't, 'tisn't the end of the world, there's always tomorrow, and tomorrow was actually the day that I had set aside to make all this, and clearly I've gotten quite the good head start. So yeah, let's get on with it. Using a ruler and pencil, I marked out a line along the remaining curtain fabric before cutting it into strips that I could use as binding. These strips then got pinned to the armholes before I retreated to the sewing machine and sewed 2 of them together to create one long piece. This was then pinned around the outside of the jacket, but before we stitch it down, there's one little addition we need to make. Taking some leftover binding, I double layered it and typed out the names of the lovely people who donated to the Ko-Fi last week. So thank you Nancy and Ella Cosplay for your donations, and here is your names being put onto the hanging loop for my waistcoat. And no, I didn't mean to do it in a matching green, but I actually kind of like how subtle it is, considering this loop, knowing me, will always be sticking sticking out the back because I'm terrible at tucking these things in when I'm wearing it. And that was all I had time for that morning. So I got a little bit distracted this morning.
Surprisingly comfy.
But it's okay, we are at about 3 in the afternoon, so I still have plenty of daylight left to get this lovely waistcoat finished. Essentially, my plan is to get hand stitching, machine stitching, hand stitching done, attach the buttons, and then that should more or less be the entire thing finished. So keep your fingers crossed for me that this all works out, and let's get to it. Now I had my focus back, it was time to hand sew those inside seams before I could officially attach the outside binding. I had a thread that was really close to the lining colour for this, so I didn't bother to make my stitches invisible. Also, because it's the lining, no one is going to see it except me and whoever is around me when I'm taking my clothes off. And if that is not Ben, who thankfully does not judge me by my stitching, I think there will be a whole other problem with that situation. Once that was complete, I sat at the sewing machine to stitch the armholes. I was a bit annoyed that this took way longer than I would have liked, but soon enough we were going around the outside edge. I actually had to re-sew the bottom row no less than 3 times with a wider and wider seam allowance each time because I wanted it to run perfectly along the bottom row of the print. So, though it was more effort, I'm glad with how it came out. Then I started pinning, just doing the armholes at first before the hand stitching began once more. And that was how I spent my afternoon, trying to get it done before the sun set because I really wanted to film the grand reveal while we had such nice sunny spring weather outside. I did not achieve this, but eventually all the binding was finished and we just had one thing left: attaching the buttons. These buttons were actually given to me by my mum, who I'm pretty sure got them in a craft kit, so not 100% sure how strong they are, but they match the colour of the waistcoat, so I'm just going to use them and hope for the best. I measured out where they were going and marked it with a pencil before firmly stitching them on. Then on the opposite side I marked out the buttonholes. These were then cut open before I used what was essentially a blanket stitch and some nice green embroidery thread to sew the edges of the holes. This is the first time I've ever hand stitched buttonholes, by the way, so I wasn't 100% sure how it would turn out, but you know what, we all need to start somewhere and I don't think they look that bad. And with that, this waistcoat is actually done. Alright guys, the jacket is done and I so love it. Now, my plan had been to go out and film a nice grand reveal in the lovely spring weather, which unfortunately can't happen because it's raining. So I'm afraid I'm just going to have to show you guys what it looks like wearing it indoors, but it is incredibly comfy. I love it. Having it padded as well, it was a great idea. It's light enough that I can wear it in warmer weather, but also that extra bit of padding is going to be super nice in the winter when I have to go out and about and it's a little bit chilly and I want something like really fancy to wear. I love it though. Having it quilted, again, brilliant idea, and I'm so glad I got to use all the different stitches. The binding as well turned out super neat and I am so pleased about it, and the fact that I actually put a hook on the back of the jacket so I can hang it up, and you know, also has my Ko-Fi sponsor names on, so that was really fun. I didn't put it central, it's a little bit off to one side, but you know, it's the first time I've ever put like a hanging hook on anything, so we'll go with the fact that it worked and I'm just going to be super pleased about that. The buttons I had for this as well matched so nicely with the waistcoat. I'm super happy. The buttonholes definitely aren't perfect, but considering they're the first buttonholes I've ever hand stitched, I'm also very pleased with them, though at some point I might want to go over them and just add a few more stitches in there just to make it a little bit firmer because some of them, I don't know, they just feel a bit loose. The binding as well came out super neat. The hand stitching on the inside wasn't supposed to be invisible, but honestly the thread matched the lining so well that it practically was. And to be fair, the entire lining of the jacket is actually super neat and tidy, so even though you can see the quilted stitches from the inside, it looks okay. Which I've got to be honest, normally linings like that, they don't look okay, so I'm pretty damn happy. Hopefully I'm going to get a lot of wear out of this jacket because it is super comfy and honestly I just love how it looks. You can't blame me for that. Otherwise guys, this was honestly just such a fun project to do. I really enjoyed it and I really enjoyed making something that essentially didn't really need a lot of fitting. It's really good to know that the smallest size fit me very well because, as I'm pretty sure I have mentioned before, we're actually going to be making several seasonal waistcoats this year and this is just the first one for spring. Unfortunately though guys, that is all for today. If you enjoyed this video, do remember to give it a like and subscribe to see more cosplay and vintage sewing content and vintage sewing machines. Don't forget about that. Otherwise guys, I hope you have a beautiful day. Remember to drop me a comment down below if you want to tell me what you think of my gorgeous spring waistcoat, and otherwise I will see you next Wednesday. Bye!